Almost every single app you use is being powered by this kind of hidden revolution. It's really a story about how we went from building these massive digital skyscrapers to crafting intricate, beautiful Lego towers. So let's just start with this question. What in the world do Lego blocks have to do with the apps on your phone? I know, it sounds a little strange, right? But trust me, by the end of this, you're going to see it's the perfect metaphor for one of the absolute biggest shifts in modern technology.
Okay, so to understand where we're going, we've got to take a quick look at where we've been. Let's trace this journey all the way from old-school punch cards to these things called monoliths that basically dominated software for decades.
What's just wild is how fast everything moved. We went from physical punch cards in the 40s to actual programming languages in the 60s. Then, bam! The 80s hit with the personal computer and graphical interfaces, and suddenly, computing was for everybody. The 2000s brought us web apps, and by the 2010s, well, we all had literal supercomputers sitting in our pockets. And every single step just piled on more complexity and more demand.
All this rapid growth led to a pretty specific way of building things called the monolithic application. And the best way to think of it is like a novel. The entire story, every character, every plot point, every single chapter is all bound together in one big interconnected book. And here's the problem. If you change a character's backstory in Chapter 2, you might accidentally create a huge plot hole in Chapter 20. Everything is tangled together.
To really see how this plays out in the real world, let's follow the story of a developer. We'll put her at a hypothetical company we can just call Acme Inc. So our developer's journey begins with a really simple, elegant idea. A web app to just list the local hotels. That's it. The code was clean, it was straightforward, totally manageable. It ran on one server and it did its one job absolutely perfectly.
But of course, it was a hit. The town loved it. And you know what happens next, right? The feature requests start pouring in. Hey, can we add restaurants? You know what would be cool? A map view. We need user reviews and ratings. Can people book directly through the site? The pressure was definitely on to grow. So our developer and her team, they just kept adding to the novel. And the code base just swelled from a few hundred lines to tens of thousands. That simple little story became this sprawling, tangled epic. A tiny change in the booking feature could now mysteriously break the entire map. The frustration was just immense. As one developer put it, we were playing bug whack-a-mole. For every issue we solved, it seemed like 2 new bugs were found. The team was spending all of its time just fixing things instead of building cool new stuff.
They were totally stuck. The app was becoming unreliable, the infrastructure just couldn't keep up, and any real innovation, it just ground to a halt. There had to be a better way, right? And this is where we get to pivot from the problem to the solution. It's time to stop writing a novel and finally start building with Lego blocks. So, welcome to the cloud-native solution.
Okay, so look at this. On the left, you've got the monolith, that tangled novel we've been talking about. It's one big piece, which makes it super difficult to change and really hard to scale. But on the right, you've got microservices, the Lego tower. It's made of many small, independent services. You need to change the review feature? No problem. You just swap out that one little Lego block. The rest of the tower stays perfectly stable. And this Lego approach, well, that's the absolute heart of what we call a cloud-native application. It's not just about running your app in the cloud, it's about building it for the cloud, right from the ground up. You use this microservices architecture to be agile, scalable, and incredibly resilient.
Of course, you can't build a Lego tower without the actual Lego pieces. So let's take a quick look at the Modern Builder's Toolkit, using some examples from Google Cloud that make this whole thing possible.
Now, don't worry about the technical jargon here. Let's just focus on the analogies because they make it really clear. Think of Kubernetes engine as the conductor for your whole orchestra of tiny services, making sure they all play in perfect harmony. Then you've got Cloud Run, which is kind of like a self-driving car for a piece of your app. It just goes where it needs to without you having to manage it. And App Engine. That's like an all-in-one apartment building that handles all the utilities for your app, so you can just focus on writing the code.
So we've seen the history, the problem, and the solution. But what's the ultimate payoff? Why go through all this trouble just to change the way we build software? Why does this matter to businesses, and maybe more importantly, to us as users?
Well, it really all comes down to these 4 things. Building with Lego means a much faster time to market. You can push out new features in days, not months. It creates incredible reliability. If the restaurant Lego block fails, the hotel and map blocks just keep on working.
It allows for massive scalability, letting you scale only the parts of the app that are getting slammed with traffic. And finally, it fosters a really agile culture, where small, focused teams can innovate and just move incredibly fast.
So think about the app you just used to order lunch. It isn't one single thing. It's probably a dozen or more tiny independent services all working together seamlessly. One for your login, one for the menu, one for payment, one for tracking the driver. And if this is what's possible today, what does this whole new way of building things make possible for us tomorrow?